What is going on, my homies? We are down in beautiful Florida, and that means we are going to be throwing this lovely bait, and that's the chatterbait, dude. There's a lot of different variations, but when it comes down to it, I don't care if these pros are sponsored by Berkley, Z-Man, whoever's on their roster of funding and sponsorship. There are 3 or 4 chatterbaits that every single pro angler has in their boats. They're such functional tools for fishing submerged grass, hydrilla, eelgrass, milfoil. We were actually on Toho, caught a whole bunch on a chatterbait, dude. It's just a powerful tool to have in your arsenal. But the reality is those 3 or 4 chatterbaits, they all provide kind of a different action or a different function in your arsenal for different situations. So we're gonna break those down, tell you kind of what applications they work best in and why you should be pulling each out in each situation. So hit that like and subscribe button for me. We're gonna talk chatterdonkers and what 3 baits you need in your boat. First off, number 1 on the roster, it's gonna be the one that everybody talks about, the Jackhammer. The Jackhammer is sort of become the standard. I don't like the price point, it's expensive, coming in at like $15.99, but in reality, it's probably one of the best performing chatterbaits or bladed jigs on the market. The thing that really sets it apart relates to components and also functionality. The Jackhammer sets itself apart from, say, the Chatterbait Original and some of the other standard variations in the way the blade starts up with absolute immediacy. And what I mean by that is when you throw that thing out there and go to engage the reel and start cranking, a lot of chatterbaits, bladed jigs, you'll feel kind of a mush at first, and then it'll catch and start chopping. With that Jackhammer, almost immediately upon that entry in the water and engaging the reel, when you start putting tension on it, that blade grabs and starts chopping. The other thing is the components. The Jackhammer is really the premium product coming from Z-Man. You know, the skirt is wrapped in wire. The hook is not super stout, but just stout enough, but an ultra sharp point hook. It just provides some of the best components, skirt-wise, blade-wise, as well as hook-wise, across the board. That's the one that I'm gonna pull out 90% of the time. Tons of colors, tons of weights. They even make up to, I think, like a 1 1/4 or a 3/4. They make some heavy ones, they make some light ones. It's the absolute standard, and it catches fish day in, day out, dude. A lot of guys are throwing it now, but it still really is that primary go-to chatterbait. Now, variations from that, and this is where we're gonna get kind of a little funky. The first one, and you guys have seen it a ton in my videos, I've always been a little bit of a finesse guy at heart. I like kind of downsizing baits, doing things a little more subtle, a little differently, I guess. And really, the Chatterbait Mini, this guy right here, has really become my go-to kind of secondary follow-up when it comes to chatterbait fishing. The Chatterbait Mini is the Mini Max. A lot of guys tag me because there's also a Chatterbait Mini, but the Mini Max is really the one that's just the awesome one. It's really kind of a lot of the aspects of the Jackhammer in a much smaller package. So you'll notice the blade is much smaller, kind of like maybe 3/4 of a thumb size. You have a smaller short shank. I'd say that's about a 2/0 hook. You also incorporate the wire-tied skirt, so that skirt's got a nice flare to it. One of the most interesting parts about the Mini, though, that I found by using it out in Guntersville, in Florida and that, is that the weight differentiation is very different from when you're fishing a Jackhammer. Whereas with a Jackhammer, your standard probably in anywhere from 3 to say 8 foot is probably a 1/2 ounce, depending on how fast you're fishing it. With that Chatterbait Mini Max, you're really downsizing to get that same performance. And what I mean by that is where you would throw, say, a 1/2 ounce Jackhammer, you'd use a 3/8 ounce Chatterbait Mini, just because the smaller package, the smaller trailer that you put on it sinks a lot faster. It stays down because of that smaller blade. You don't get as much lift from the blade, so you're able to kind of keep that lighter bait lower in the water column. And also what's kind of cool too is a lot of guys will skip, for instance, a jackhammer. One of the greatest baits when it comes to chatterbaits to skip is this mini. You take a 3/8 ounce, dude. It's very light, it's very streamlined, it has that kind of arky style head, and dude, it freaking flies back into the back of docks, way back under there. And it has kind of a very subtle splash to it too. It's not like wonking that big old jackhammer back there with a big trailer on it. I love it for that kind of an application. Another interesting thing too is I've noticed it fishes a lot more like a trap. The vibration is a lot tighter. It's a lot more of that instead of that chugga 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 kind of deal, if that makes any sense. And I've noticed you can fish it a lot more like a trap. You use it on a little lighter setup. I'll throw mine on a 7-foot medium, and the way I rip it is a lot more comparable to a trap than what I do with a jackhammer. Downsized presentation, a little less vibration, smaller, fish are a little less tentative with it. It has kind of an interesting flutter in that. That's really my second follow-up. If I'm on trap fish, if I'm on, you know, jackhammer fish, it's kind of what I'll pull out to sort of clean up afterwards, or if I know those fish are there and I can't trigger them with that standard jackhammer. The other one is, I don't think it gets enough love. It's the Chatterbait, it's the Stealth Jackhammer. This one, really the biggest thing that sets it apart, and you can see, because you can see my finger right through the blade, is the plastic blade. So unlike the Jackhammer, the Chatterbait Mini Max, that have metal blades, this incorporates almost what's a plastic style square bill kind of blade on there. It's a very different presentation. It really compares a lot to when you have painted blades on your chatterbait. What actually happens is, components wise, it's pretty much equivalent to the jackhammer. You have the same hook on there, you have the same wire tied skirt, you have that same keeper, but that plastic blade, I don't know what it is, if it's the greater amount of flex that you get from plastic, it's a little less stiff than that metal, but it has a deeper, sort of more subtle thud. A lot of guys focus on how it's clear, so it's more finesse. I don't think that's really the key factor when it comes to this Chatterbait Stealth. I think it has to do with the fact that that blade is a little bit thicker, and the flex of that plastic leads to a deeper, more subtle vibration. It's almost kind of like the one knocker, I guess, of chatterbaits. So I'm gonna pull this out when maybe I'm on a lake like Toho, a lake like Gunnersville that gets a lot of chatterbait pressure. Maybe there's been a big tournament out there. I'm looking to get a different vibration, but some of the same performance as that jackhammer, just to change it. It's just like the same reason we'll use like a one knocker or a silent trap when it comes to trap fishing, just to kind of mix it up, or maybe like a tungsten true knock. You're trying to get a different vibration with that same presentation that calls the fish up, that behaves in the same manner, but triggers them because that vibration is not that same standardized jackhammer vibration that they're hearing time and time again. I will tell you this, with the Stealth, there is a little more blade washout. The blade is not as responsive as the metal blades, but it's one of those things you can kind of manipulate it with how you fish it. I do fish it on the same setup that I'll fish that jackhammer. Occasionally I do go a little lighter and put it on a medium rod. The actual blade is just, it seems like, or it feels like it's a little bit smaller when you're actually fishing it. So I'll downsize my rod a little bit to slow roll a little bit more. But in general, I'm running like a 7.2 medium heavy for that jackhammer and that Stealth, and then I'm running a 7-foot medium for that Chatterbait Mini Max. And 90% of the time, it's 15-pound fluorocarbon for both. You're usually fishing around cover or over grass. So I want something somewhat stout, but something that I can make some long casts with. Down in Florida, I will upgrade it with that jackhammer up to 20-pound fluorocarbon, just because some of this hydrilla, especially on Toho, what I ran into, it gets so thick, and you hook them, they come out of the grass and then they go straight down in that grass, and you need to be able to put some pressure in order to kind of work them out and maybe draw out like a ball of grass with them. The other one, and I don't actually have any with me, dude, I left them at the house, is the Chatterbait, the Big Blade. And it's a design by Brian Thrift. The biggest difference, and I don't throw it a ton, but the reason that I get out the Big Blade is twofold. One would be for that change in vibration. You're on megas, you're looking to really create create some thud, or maybe you have some dirtier water, you're really looking to create a lot of vibration, a lot of water displacement. The other big key with that Chatterbait Big Blade is really the way it lifts the bait. You can throw a 1/2 ounce and keep it in like about a foot of water, because that larger blade, just like a bigger blade on a crankbait, makes it dive deeper. Since that blade is angled upwards, that bigger blade on a Chatterbait Big Blade, it pushes that bait up much quicker. So you're able to kind of suspend it or keep it in that column above grass, above cover. So it gives you an ability to kind of keep it up a lot higher, but still present that heavier bait and displace a lot more water. But those are the baits that I think, chatterbait wise, every pro, like I said, I don't care if they're a Z-Man guy, a Berkeley guy, whoever, every pro has that range of chatterbaits in the boat, just because they provide fixes for various problems and address various situations when you're fishing a chatterbait up in the grass, around cover, and they're powerful tools, dude. I'll put links to everything down in the description box for you guys to check out at Tackle Warehouse and Monster Bass. But dude, if you haven't thrown a chatterbait in spring, you need to get on it. It's a powerful tool around grass, around cover, skipping docks. Get some big bites. It's a lot of fun to fish, dude. Tie lines, my homies. We will see you back out on the water, catching megs, or freaking talking about baits and how to catch more fish.